The crystal chandeliers cast golden light across the dining room, where 30 guests sat in carefully arranged hierarchy. Zara's hands trembled as she carried the silver platter, her black uniform pristine, her natural coils pulled into a tight bun that made her scalp ache. She'd worked in the Kim mansion for only 3 weeks, but she'd already learned the most important rule: be invisible, especially around Mrs. Kim. Ji-hee Kim sat at the opposite end of the table from her husband, dripping in diamonds that cost more than Zara would make in 10 lifetimes. The woman's porcelain face remained frozen in a polite smile as she conversed in Korean with the older guests, family members, business associates, people whose approval meant everything in this world. At the head of the table, Jae-won Kim watched it all with eyes like black ice. The dragon tattoo crawling up his neck seemed to pulse with life as he shifted, the 4 undone buttons of his white shirt revealing tan skin and barely restrained power. He terrified Zara, but not nearly as much as his wife did. Zara had served at elegant dinners before, back when she'd worked catering jobs in Atlanta before moving to Los Angeles, but nothing had prepared her for the suffocating formality of a Korean Mafia family gathering. Every movement was choreographed, every word weighed and measured. She'd almost made it through the main course without incident. "More wine," Ji-hee's voice cut through the conversation like a blade. She didn't look at Zara, hadn't looked directly at her once in 3 weeks, as if acknowledging the help's existence was beneath her. Zara approached with the bottle, her movements careful and practiced. She'd learned to make herself small, to bend her 5'7" frame into something less threatening to women like Ji-hee Kim, who stood barely 5'2" but wielded cruelty like a weapon. The room continued its dance of conversation, Korean phrases mixed with English, laughter at appropriate intervals. Zara poured the wine, the Bordeaux catching the light as it filled the crystal glass. She was turning away when Ji-hee's hand moved. The glass tipped. Red wine exploded across the white tablecloth, splashing onto Ji-hee's ivory Chanel dress in a crimson stain that spread like blood. The conversation died instantly. "You clumsy fool!" Ji-hee shot to her feet, her face contorting with rage. The porcelain mask shattered, revealing the venom beneath. "Look what you've done." "I'm so sorry, Mrs. Kim. Sorry?" Ji-hee's laugh was shrill, cutting. "Do you know how much this dress costs? More than your pathetic life is worth." Zara's cheeks burned with humiliation as 30 pairs of eyes fixed on her. She grabbed a napkin, reaching to help clean the stain. Ji-hee slapped her hand away. "Don't touch me with your filthy hands." "Ji-hee." Jae-won's voice was quiet. Too quiet. The kind of quiet that preceded violence. His wife ignored him, switching to Korean as she addressed the table. Zara caught enough to understand she was being called incompetent, stupid, unworthy of working in a respectable household. Then Ji-hee's eyes traveled over Zara's face, her natural hair, her dark mahogany skin. When she spoke again, it was in English. Clear, deliberate, designed to wound. "This is what happens when you hire these people. They're only good for scrubbing toilets, not serving civilized company." Her lips curled. "Look at that hair. Like she stuck her finger in an electrical socket. Probably hasn't seen a comb in weeks." The words landed like physical blows. Zara's vision blurred with tears. She refused to let fall. She'd heard it all before. The comments about her hair, her skin, her worth. But never like this. Never in front of so many people. "That's enough." Jae-won stood, the movement fluid and predatory. "She ruined my dress. I want her fired. Tonight. Get her out of my sight. I said enough." The temperature in the room plummeted. Jae-won's voice remained soft, but something deadly laced each syllable. He moved around the table with lethal grace, the dragon tattoo seeming to coil tighter around his throat. "The wine spilled because you knocked the glass over yourself. I watched you do it." Ji-hee's face paled. "What are you... Did you think I wouldn't notice? Did you think I'm blind to your petty cruelties?" He stopped directly in front of his wife, towering over her. "For 3 weeks, I've watched you torment this woman, watched you make her life miserable for the crime of existing in your presence. She's just a maid. She's a human being, something you seem to have forgotten how to be." The room held its collective breath. This wasn't how things were done. Wives weren't challenged in front of guests, certainly not by husbands in their world, where saving face meant everything. But Jae-won had never been good at following rules. He turned to Zara, and for the first time she saw something in his eyes beyond cold authority. something that looked almost like regret. "Are you all right?" The question, asked gently in front of 30 witnesses, broke something in Zara's chest. When was the last time anyone had asked if she was all right? Yes, sir. Did my wife spill that wine herself?" Zara's throat closed. To answer truthfully was to make an enemy. To lie was to betray the man whose eyes pleaded with her to tell the truth. "Yes," she whispered. "She did." Ji-Hai's shriek of outrage split the air. "You lying bitch! How dare you! How dare you!" Jae-won's hand shot out, gripping his wife's wrist before she could strike Zara. "How dare you raise your hand to her? How dare you speak to her that way? How dare you embarrass me and yourself in front of our guests with your racism and cruelty?" He released her wrist like it burned him. Then, deliberately, he removed the platinum wedding band from his finger and set it on the table with a decisive click. "I want a divorce." The room erupted, gasps in Korean and English. Ji-Hai staggered backward, her face cycling through shock, rage, and disbelief. "You can't. We have an agreement. Our families arranged a marriage between two people who've hated each other since the wedding night. I've honored that agreement for 5 miserable years. No more." He turned to address the table, switching to Korean for the benefit of the elders. Zara didn't understand all the words, but she understood the tone. Final. Absolute. The declaration of a man who'd made his decision and would not be swayed. When he switched back to English, his eyes found Zara's. "You're dismissed for the evening. Go upstairs. Rest. Tomorrow we'll discuss your new position." "New position?" Ji-Hai's voice rose to a screech. "You're choosing her over me? A maid? Careful." The single word dropped like a guillotine blade. "The next insult you speak will be the last words you ever say in this house. Choose wisely." Ji-Hai's mouth snapped shut, but the hatred burning in her eyes promised this wasn't over. Zara fled the dining room on shaking legs, her heart pounding so hard she thought it might burst. Behind her, the silence finally broke into chaos. Raised voices, demands for explanation, the sound of Ji-Hai's hysterical sobbing. She made it to her small room on the 3rd floor before the tears came. She'd just witnessed something impossible. A Mafia boss choosing a black maid over his wife in front of his entire organization. She should be terrified. Instead, as she replayed the look in Jae-won Kim's eyes when he'd asked if she was all right, Zara felt something far more dangerous than fear. Hope. Zara didn't sleep. How could she? Knowing that downstairs her entire future was being decided by people who considered her less than human. She sat on her narrow bed, still in her uniform, listening to the sounds of the mansion settling. Car doors slamming, engines starting, voices raised in argument. The dinner party was ending, but the consequences were just beginning. At 2 a.m. a knock sounded on her door. She opened it to find Mrs. Park, the head housekeeper, a stern Korean woman in her 60s who'd treated Zara with cool professionalism for 3 weeks. "Mr. Kim requests your presence in his study." Terror and anticipation warred in Zara's chest. Now? Now? She followed Mrs. Park through the silent mansion, their footsteps echoing on marble floors. The study was on the 2nd floor, behind heavy oak doors that opened to reveal floor-to-ceiling bookshelves, leather furniture, and Jae-won Kim standing by the window overlooking the grounds. He'd removed his suit jacket. The white shirt, with its 4 undone buttons, revealed more of the dragon tattoo, the creature's tail disappearing beneath fabric. He held a glass of whiskey and didn't turn when she entered. "Sit." Zara perched on the edge of a leather chair, her hands clasped in her lap. Mrs. Park had vanished, closing the doors and leaving them alone. "Do you know why I hired you?" Jae-won asked the window. "No, sir. 3 weeks ago, I went to a diner in Koreatown. You were working there, 3rd shift, exhausted, running between tables with a smile you didn't feel." Finally he turned. His eyes were bloodshot. Whether from alcohol or exhaustion, she couldn't tell. "I watched you handle a drunk customer who grabbed your ass. Watched you smile and deflect and somehow get him to leave without causing a scene. And I thought, that's someone who knows how to survive." Zara's breath caught. He'd been watching her before she'd even known he existed. "I needed someone in my house. Someone who understood what it meant to be invisible, who knew how to navigate hostile territory." He took a drink, the whiskey catching the lamplight. "But I also wanted to see you every day, even if I couldn't have you." The confession hung in the air between them. "You're married," Zara whispered. "I was married, As of tonight, that arrangement is finished. He moved closer, each step deliberate. Ji-hai will leave tomorrow. I've already made the arrangements. Her family will protest, but they'll accept it. They have no choice. Because I'm the one with the power. Yes. He stopped directly in front of her chair, looking down with an intensity that made her skin prickle. I should have divorced her years ago. Should have ended the farce the moment I realized we'd destroy each other, if forced to stay together. But I was comfortable, complacent. It took watching her try to break you to remember what real cruelty looks like. Zara stood, unable to remain seated under that gaze. Why are you telling me this? Because I need you to understand something. His hand rose, fingers gentle as they traced the curve of her jaw. The touch sent electricity cascading through her nervous system. What happened tonight, it wasn't about defending an employee. It was about defending the woman I've been falling in love with for 3 weeks. The world tilted. You can't. I can. I am. And I know it's insane. I know you have every reason to run from this house and never look back. His thumb brushed across her lower lip. But I'm asking you to stay. Not as a maid, as whatever you want to be. My assistant. My companion. Eventually, if you'll have me, something more. Zara's mind reeled. This couldn't be real. Men like Jae-won Kim didn't fall for women like her. Didn't risk everything for a black woman with no money, no connections, no power. Except he had. In front of 30 witnesses, he'd chosen her over his wife, over his comfortable arrangement, over everything that made sense in his world. I don't understand, she breathed. Then let me make it clear. He cupped her face with both hands, tilting her head back. From the moment I saw you, you've been under my skin. Your strength, your dignity, the way you smile even when everything hurts. Ji-hai spent 5 years trying to make me love her and only succeeded in making me hate who I became around her. You spent 3 weeks being yourself and I fell completely. This is crazy. Probably. A ghost of a smile touched his lips. But I've built an empire on crazy decisions. This is just one more. He was going to kiss her. Zara saw the intention in his eyes, in the way his gaze dropped to her mouth. Every logical thought screamed at her to pull away, to protect herself, to remember that fairy tales didn't happen to girls like her. But when his lips met hers, logic evaporated. The kiss was gentle at first, testing, asking permission. Then Zara's hands fisted in his shirt, pulling him closer, and gentle became consuming. He tasted like whiskey and promises, and when his arms wrapped around her waist, lifting her against him, she felt safer than she'd felt in her entire life, which was insane. He was a gangster, a man who ruled through violence and fear. His world was blood and secrets and danger. But his hands were so gentle, his kiss so reverent, like she was something precious instead of disposable. When they finally broke apart, both breathing hard, Jae-won rested his forehead against hers. "Stay," he whispered. "Please." Zara should say no, should grab her few belongings and disappear before this impossible situation destroyed her. Instead, she heard herself whisper, "Okay." His smile was brilliant, transforming his entire face. "Thank you." That night, she didn't return to her small room on the 3rd floor. She stayed in his study, talking until dawn broke over Los Angeles. He told her about his childhood, son of a gangster, raised between 2 worlds, Korean and American, never quite belonging to either. About the arranged marriage that had been more business merger than union. About the loneliness of power. She told him about growing up in Atlanta with a single mother who'd worked herself to death. About moving to LA, chasing dreams that had withered in the face of reality. About the bone-deep exhaustion of working 3 jobs just to survive. "Never again," he said fiercely. "You'll never struggle like that again. I don't want to be bought. I'm not trying to buy you. I'm trying to give you the life you deserve." He laced his fingers through hers. "Stay because you want to, not because you need the money." And Zara realized, somewhere between the kiss and the confession, and the way he looked at her like she hung the moon, she did want to stay. Not for the mansion or the money or the escape from poverty, but for him. Ji-hai left the mansion the next morning with 12 suitcases and a promise of vengeance that echoed through the halls. Zara watched from an upstairs window as luxury cars arrived to collect her, as she screamed at Jae-won in rapid Korean, as she finally swept away in a cloud of designer perfume and wounded pride. "She'll cause trouble," Mrs. Park said quietly, appearing beside Zara. The older woman's expression remained neutral, but something had shifted in how she looked at Zara. Mrs. Kim has connections, family, friends. I know. Mr. Kim has chosen you. That makes you a target. Zara turned to face her. Are you warning me or threatening me? Mrs. Park's lips twitched, almost a smile. Warning. Mr. Kim, he's a good man, underneath everything else. He deserves happiness. And you, she paused, studying Zara with shrewd eyes. You're stronger than you look. You'll need to be. The first week passed in a surreal haze. Jae-won moved Zara into the guest wing, a suite of rooms that included a bedroom larger than her entire apartment in Koreatown had been. He bought her clothes that actually fit, jewelry she was afraid to wear, books she'd mentioned loving once in passing. You don't have to buy me things, she protested after the third delivery of designer dresses. I want to. Let me. He pulled her onto his lap in his study, nuzzling into her neck. I've spent 5 years buying things for a woman who never appreciated anything. Let me spoil someone who actually deserves it. The mansion staff adjusted to the change with varying degrees of acceptance. Some, like Mrs. Park, seemed relieved that Ji-hye was gone. Others whispered in Korean when Zara passed, their judgment clear even without understanding the words. But Jae-won didn't care. He kept her by his side constantly, at business dinners, during meetings with associates, even when handling the darker aspects of his empire. She became his translator of American culture, his second set of eyes, his conscience when violence became too appealing. You make me better, he told her one night, his head in her lap as she ran fingers through his hair. Softer, more human. You were always human. Was I? He caught her hand, pressing a kiss to her palm. Sometimes I wonder. This life, it strips humanity away piece by piece. You're giving it back. Zara learned the rhythms of his world, the legitimate businesses, restaurants, real estate, import, export, that fronted for less legal operations, the delicate balance of power between Korean factions in LA, the constant vigilance required to stay on top. She also learned Jae-won's body, the scars from old fights, the way he shuddered when she traced the dragon tattoo with her tongue, how he loved falling asleep with his head on her stomach, her fingers in his hair. They hadn't slept together yet, not fully. He was waiting, giving her time to be sure, but the tension built like a storm, electric and inevitable. It broke 3 weeks after Ji-hye's departure. Zara woke to raised voices downstairs, Korean, rapid and angry. She grabbed a robe and hurried to the study, where Jae-won stood surrounded by his lieutenants. What's wrong? He turned, and the ice in his eyes made her blood run cold. Ji-hye, she's made her move. What did she do? She went to the Park family, my biggest rivals. He laughed bitterly. She's given them information, shipment schedules, routes, names of informants in their organization. One of the lieutenants spoke in harsh Korean. Jae-won responded in kind, his tone dismissive. The lieutenant persisted, gesturing toward Zara. What's he saying? She asked quietly. Jae-won's jaw clenched. He's saying this is your fault, that I was distracted by you and didn't see Ji-hye's betrayal coming. Is he right? No. He crossed to her, cupping her face. Ji-hye was always going to betray me. She hated me long before you arrived. You're not the cause, you're the excuse she used. But Zara could see the doubt in his lieutenant's eyes, the way they looked at her. This black woman who'd somehow bewitched their boss into throwing away a strategic marriage. I should go, she said. Leave the city. If I'm gone, Ji-hye loses her leverage. No. The word was absolute. You're not going anywhere. Jae-won. I said no. He turned to his men, switching to Korean. The conversation was heated, voices rising. Finally, he barked what was clearly an order, and they filed out, leaving them alone. What did you tell them? That you're under my protection, that anyone who harms you answers to me, and that Ji-hye has made herself an enemy of this organization. He pulled Zara against him, his heart pounding beneath her ear. I won't let her hurt you, won't let anyone hurt you. What are you going to do? What I should have done years ago, end this completely. The war began quietly. Shipments disappeared, informants went silent. The Park family made moves that should have crippled Jae-won's operations, guided by Ji-hye's insider knowledge. But Jae-won was always 3 steps ahead. For every move they made, he countered with something more devastating. Money disappeared from Park accounts. Their legitimate businesses faced sudden inspections. Key allies switched sides. And through it all, he kept Zara close. His secret weapon, his motivation, his reason for fighting harder than he'd ever fought before. "She's worth more than you ever were," he told Ji-hai during the one phone call she dared to make, his voice carrying through the study where Zara listened. "You gave me 5 years of misery. She's given me 3 weeks of happiness. There's no comparison." Ji-hai's response was shrill, venomous. Jae-won listened calmly, then said something in Korean that made her fall silent. "What did you say?" Zara asked when he hung up. "That if she comes near you, there won't be a hole deep enough for her to hide in." He pulled Zara into his arms. "I meant it." That night, finally, they gave in to the attraction that had been building since that first kiss. Jae-won made love to her with a tenderness that brought tears to her eyes, whispering in Korean and English, promises and prayers mixed together. "You're mine now," he breathed against her skin. "Completely. Yours," she agreed, and meant it. The attack came on a Tuesday night. Zara was in the garden, a sanctuary she'd claimed as her own in the sprawling mansion grounds, when the first gunshots shattered the silence. Security swarmed immediately, pulling her back toward the house as chaos erupted. Men in black emerged from vehicles parked outside the gates, weapons drawn. The Park family, making their statement. Jae-won appeared like an avenging angel, gun in hand, the dragon tattoo seeming to writhe as he moved. "Get her to the safe room." "I'm not leaving you." "Now!" The command brooked no argument. Mrs. Park materialized, grabbing Zara's arm and hauling her through the mansion's hidden passages. The safe room was in the basement. Reinforced steel, enough supplies for a week. Communications equipment that kept them connected to what was happening above. Through security cameras, Zara watched the firefight. Watched Jae-won move with lethal precision, dropping attackers with calm efficiency. Watched his men defend their territory with the organization of a military operation. It lasted 15 minutes. When the smoke cleared, 5 Park soldiers lay dead or wounded. None of Jae-won's men had fallen. "It's a message," Mrs. Park said grimly. "They're testing his defenses. Because of me. Because of Ji-hai's pride. You're just the excuse." The older woman's expression softened. "Mr. Kim chose you, child. That makes you family. We protect family." When Jae-won finally came for her, he was covered in blood, none of it his. He pulled Zara into his arms, holding her so tightly she could barely breathe. "I'm okay," she whispered. "I'm okay. They came for you. To my home. To take what's mine." His voice shook with barely controlled rage. "No more. This ends tomorrow. What are you going to do? End it. Completely." He pulled back, framing her face with hands that still trembled. "But I need you to trust me. What happens next, it won't be pretty, it won't be legal, and you can never speak of it. I trust you." The next day, Jae-won called a meeting. Not with his organization, with the Park family leadership. A formal sit-down, mediated by neutral parties, held on neutral ground. Ji-hee attended, her face a mask of triumph. She thought she was winning, thought she'd finally found a way to destroy the husband who'd humiliated her. She was wrong. Zara watched via secure video feed as Jae-won laid out his case, not in anger but in cold, calculated precision. He presented evidence of Ji-hai's betrayal, not just to him, but to both families. How she'd manipulated information, playing both sides, hoping they'd destroy each other and leave her to claim the pieces. "She's not loyal to you," he told the Park family head. "She's loyal only to herself. And when you're no longer useful, she'll betray you too." He showed bank records, communications, proof that Ji-hai had been skimming money from both organizations, building her own nest egg while everyone else bled. The Park's expressions shifted from triumph to fury. Ji-hee's mask cracked, revealing panic beneath. "You have a choice," Jae-won said calmly. "We can continue this war, which benefits no one but her, or we can end it. Return to the old agreements and deal with the real traitor together." The Parks looked at Ji-hai, at the evidence, at the woman who'd promised them victory and delivered only chaos. "She's yours," the Park family head said finally. "Do with her as you will." Jae-won's smile was cold. "I don't want her. She's contaminated. Toxic." He stood, buttoning his suit jacket with deliberate precision. "But I want her gone, out of LA, out of California. If I ever see her face again, there won't be enough of her left to identify." Ji-hai opened her mouth, to protest, to threaten, to curse. But the Parks were already dragging her away, their own fury now directed at the woman who'd made fools of them all. When Jae-won returned to the mansion, He found Zara waiting in his study. He stopped in the doorway, suddenly uncertain. "Is it over?" she asked. "It's over." She crossed to him, reaching up to loosen his tie. "Are you okay?" "I should be asking you that. After everything. I'm still here. Still yours." She kissed him softly. "That's all that matters." Something in his expression crumbled. He pulled her close, burying his face in her neck. "I love you. God, I love you so much it terrifies me." "I love you too." They stood there, holding each other as the sun set over Los Angeles. Two people from different worlds, bound together by something stronger than logic or propriety or fear. "Marry me," J1 whispered. Zara pulled back, searching his face. "What?" "Marry me. Not because of tradition or arrangement or family pressure, but because I want to wake up next to you every day for the rest of my life." He dropped to one knee, pulling out a ring, not the gaudy diamond Ji-Hai had worn, but a simpler band of platinum set with a single, perfect sapphire. "Marry me because you love me, because I love you, because together we're unstoppable." Tears streamed down Zara's face. A month ago, she'd been a struggling waitress. Now she was being proposed to by a Mafia boss who'd chosen her over everything. "Yes," she breathed. "Yes." His kiss tasted like victory and promises, and forever. The wedding took place 3 months later, not the traditional Korean ceremony Ji-Hai's family had demanded, but something new. Something that honored both their heritages while creating something uniquely theirs. Zara wore a dress that celebrated her curves, her natural hair styled in elegant coils crowned with flowers. Jaewon wore a traditional hanbok in midnight blue, the dragon tattoo visible above the collar. The guest list was small. Mrs. Park cried through the entire ceremony. Jaewon's grandmother, who'd flown in from Seoul, clasped Zara's hands and said something in Korean that made Jaewon's eyes shine with unshed tears. "She said you saved me," he translated. "She said she'd been praying for someone to bring me back to life, and the gods sent you." Later, at the reception held in the mansion's gardens, Zara stood with her new husband and surveyed the impossible reality of her life. 6 months ago, she'd been invisible, disposable. Another struggling black woman in a city that chewed people up and spit them out. Now she was Mrs. Kim, wife of the most powerful Korean gangster in California. Protected, cherished, loved. "Any regrets?" Jaewon asked, pulling her close as music drifted through the warm evening air. "Not one. Even knowing what I am, what I do?" She turned in his arms, looking up at the man who'd defended her, chosen her, made her his entire world. "Especially knowing what you are. You're mine, Jaewon Kim. The good and the bad and everything in between." "Yours," he agreed. "Always." News reached them a week later. Ji-Hai had left California entirely, fleeing to the East Coast with what remained of her stolen fortune. The Park family had put a price on her head, but Jaewon called it off. "Let her go," he told his lieutenants. "She's already lost everything that mattered. That's punishment enough." But it wasn't mercy. It was indifference. Ji-Hai had become irrelevant the moment she'd walked out of his life. Zara, meanwhile, had become everything. She took over management of Jaewon's legitimate businesses, her fresh perspective and genuine care for employees, transforming them into more than just fronts. The restaurants flourished. The real estate holdings expanded. Even the import-export business found new markets under her guidance. "You're better at this than I am," Jaewon admitted one night, reviewing quarterly reports. "I just care about the people. You were always focused on the power. And now," she smiled, tracing the dragon tattoo at his throat, "now you focus on us. The empire can take care of itself." 6 months after the wedding, Zara stood in their bedroom, staring at the positive pregnancy test with trembling hands. A baby. They were going to have a baby. When she told Jaewon, he lifted her off her feet, spinning her around with a joy she'd never seen from him. A child. Our child. "Are you happy?" "Happy doesn't begin to cover it." He set her down gently, his hand settling over her still flat stomach. "You've given me everything, Zara. A reason to be better, a reason to build instead of just control, and now, a future." That night, lying in their bed with his arms around her, Zara thought back to that terrible dinner, the humiliation, the wine staining white fabric, Ji-Hai's cruel words. If someone had told her then that 6 months later she'd be here, married, loved, carrying the child of the man who'd defended her, she never would have believed it. But sometimes, the impossible became real. Sometimes fairy tales happened to girls like her. And sometimes, the most dangerous man in Los Angeles turned out to be the safest place to fall. The nursery overlooked the garden where Zara had once hidden from the world. Now it was painted in soft yellows and greens, filled with toys and books and love. Jaewon sat in the rocking chair, their daughter, Mia, sleeping against his chest. At 4 months old, she had Zara's rich brown skin and Jaewon's dark eyes, a perfect blend of both their heritages. "She's going to be spoiled rotten," Zara said from the doorway. "Absolutely." He didn't look up, his attention completely absorbed by the tiny human in his arms. "She's a princess. My princess. Our princess. Our princess," he agreed, finally meeting her eyes. The love there still took her breath away. "Thank you." "For what?" "For staying. For giving me this. For being brave enough to love someone like me." Zara crossed to him, kissing the top of his head. "Thank you for choosing me. For seeing me when everyone else looked through me." In the distance, the sounds of the mansion continued. Mrs. Park directing staff, security making their rounds, the business of the empire running smoothly. But here, in this room, there was only love. Ji-hye had tried to break her, had tried to make her small and worthless and invisible. Instead, she'd inadvertently given Zara everything, because Jaewon's revenge hadn't been the divorce or the public humiliation. It hadn't been the war with the Parks or Ji-hye's exile. His revenge had been choosing happiness, choosing love, choosing the woman Ji-hye had tried to destroy, and making her a queen. And as Mia stirred in her father's arms, opening her eyes to look at the two people who loved her more than anything in the world, Zara knew this was the life she'd been meant for all along. She'd just had to survive long enough to find it.